Good morning, warriors. Welcome to Morning Adrenaline. Today is Tuesday, June 23rd, 2026, and it is time to wake up the warrior. Hey, listen, can you relate to this? Some chapters of life feel like everything around you is falling apart. Your plans change, the pressure increases, and your future becomes harder to see. In life, sometimes we need to reframe in order for higher personal power and authority. So here's a reframe for you. What if this isn't the chapter that's breaking you, but what if it's the chapter that's building you? Listen, I can relate to what you're probably going through right now if you're dealing with hard times. There are seasons in life when the weight feels heavier than usual. Maybe you're dealing with financial pressures, relationship struggles, health challenges, business setbacks. Perhaps your faith is wavering. If you're normal, these seasons test your patience, your focus, and your faith. And if you're not careful, you'll start believing a very dangerous story. You're going to start believing that where you are is where you'll stay, that this setback defines you, that this season has no purpose. And listen, that is not how growth works. The most purposeful growth happens in darkness, not in the light. See, your discipline wasn't built through comfort. Your character wasn't built through comfort, and your wisdom was not built through comfort. Everything valuable inside you was developed through challenge. But the problem is that while you're walking in the fire, development doesn't feel like development. It just feels difficult and it feels heavy. And that is where we start to get it wrong. So today's message, I'm calling it, "This is not the end of your story." If life feels heavy for you right now, if you're carrying pressure that nobody else can see, if you're questioning how much longer you can keep pushing forward, keep holding on, hear me clearly right now. This chapter is not your conclusion. This season is not your identity, and your circumstances are not your future. In fact, this chapter is the beginning of something really special for you. If God is putting you through it, it has purpose. But it's up to you to persevere and follow that plan. See, too many people quit in the middle of a difficult chapter. Too many people mistake a setback for a life sentence. Too many people allow one difficult chapter to convince them that the book is over. It's not worth writing anymore. And then they say things like, "I told you this is how it would end." But the strongest people you know weren't built when everything was working properly. They built when they had every reason to stop, but chose to keep moving forward anyway. This is not the end of your story, unless you choose it to be, which is where the good news lies. It's your choice. The better choice is to make the chapter that's demanding more from you, and you use it to build the strongest version of yourself. So here's the question of the day. Are you treating this season of your life like a graveyard or like a construction site? Think about that for a moment, because the answer to that question will determine what happens next for you, what lies ahead of you, what your future looks like, what your legacy looks like, what your family's future looks like. A graveyard is a place where things go to die, where things end. A construction site is a place where something new and exciting is being built. Both can look very messy. Both can feel very uncomfortable, and both involve loss. But they lead to very different outcomes. One creates resignation. The other creates responsibility. One focuses on what was lost. The other focuses on what can still be built. And that's the decision that's sitting in front of you right now, this moment. So let's talk about what this season is really asking of you. Every difficult season leaves people with a choice. Some emerge stronger, some emerge bitter, some emerge wiser, some emerge defeated. The difference isn't the challenge, the difference is how you respond to it. See, over the years, I've noticed something. People that keep moving forward during the hardest seasons of life tend to discover the exact same truths. They're not theories, they're not motivational quotes, they're actual truths. And they're truths that change how they think, truths that change how they act, truths that help them stop fighting reality and start building from it. So whether you're dealing with financial pressure, relationship challenges, health struggles, uncertainty, or a season that simply feels heavier than expected, heavier than normal, these truths apply. Because every challenge looks different, but growth follows the same principles. So I'm calling them the 6 truths every builder learns in the dark. So let's walk through them. Here's truth number 1. You must face the facts of your current chapter. The first truth every builder learns is really simple. You can't build a better future while refusing to acknowledge your current reality. See, many people spend years fighting the actual truth, pretending things are better than they are, avoiding conversations they need to have, ignoring problems they need to address, hoping circumstances will change without changing themselves or their actions. But reality doesn't respond to avoidance. Reality responds to action. If your finances need attention, face it. If your health needs attention, face it. If your relationships need attention, face them. Not with shame, not with guilt, but with responsibility. See, responsibility is where your power lives. The moment you stop blaming, defending, and avoiding, you become dangerous. Not to other people, but to limitations that have been holding you back. You can't conquer a problem you refuse to name. So here's the truth you need to acknowledge. This dark chapter doesn't need your denial, it needs your leadership. Now, before you can change your life, you must now change the questions that you ask. So here's the second truth. Stop asking why and start asking what. When life gets hard, most people ask the same question. Why is this happening to me? It's a natural question, but it's rarely a useful one. Because even if you got the answer, you're still standing in the same place. So builders ask a different question. What is this season trying to teach me? What needs to change? What strength needs to be developed? What responsibility have I been avoiding? What action is required of me now? And that shift changes everything because your focus moves from blame to growth, from frustration to responsibility, and from waiting to actually building. And here's what you're going to discover when you go through that process. Every difficult season contains a lesson. Not every lesson is comfortable. Not every lesson is valuable. But victims look for reasons and builders look for requirements. One keeps you stuck in the chapter. The other helps you write the next one. Now, once you start asking better questions, clarity begins to appear. So here's your third truth. Pressure reveals what matters. See, most people see pressure as the enemy. Builders see pressure as a filter. When life becomes difficult, distractions become obvious. You begin to see where your energy has been going, what deserves your attention and what doesn't, what strengthens your future and what weakens it, what habits are moving you forward and which are keeping you stuck. Pressure has a way of stripping life down to what is essential. And that, my friends, is a gift because clarity is one of the most valuable things a person can possess. See, people spend years chasing more money, more opportunities, more possessions, more validation. But then a difficult season arrives and teaches them something really powerful. Sometimes growth isn't about adding. Sometimes it's about removing distractions, removing excuses, removing habits that no longer serve the person that you are becoming. So listen to me carefully. Pressure doesn't create priorities. Pressure reveals them. And when you finally see what matters most, you can begin building a life that reflects it. So let's pause for a moment in our truths for a second, because this is important. Understanding the challenges that we just discussed is not enough. The three truths that we just talked about were about diagnosis, facing reality, asking better questions, and gaining clarity. Because you can't solve a problem that you don't understand. You can't build a future while ignoring the present, and you can't move forward until you see clearly. But awareness alone doesn't create transformation. Knowing what needs to change and actually changing it are two different things. See, a lot of people can identify the problem. Far fewer are willing to become the person required to solve it. And that is where we go next. Because this episode isn't about surviving difficult seasons, it's about building through them. So the next three truths are different. The first three helped you understand the challenge. The next three are designed to rebuild you, to strengthen your mindset, to expand your capacity, and to eliminate resistance, to help you become the person this season is trying to create. Because this is not the end of the story. And the version of you that emerges from this chapter will be determined by what you build next. So let's jump into the fourth truth. This assignment requires development. Every person wants the assignment. Few people want the development. You want the stronger marriage. You want the successful business. You want the financial freedom. You want the influence. You want the impact. But every assignment requires your capacity. And capacity must be built before it can be carried. So this is where people start to get discouraged. They assume the challenge means they're off course. They assume the resistance means they're failing. They assume that pressure means something is wrong. And most of the time, the opposite is actually true. The pressure isn't stopping your development. The pressure is the development. See, God rarely gives the assignment before building the person capable of carrying it. Let that sink in for a minute. The future version of your life, if you truly want desirable outcomes, requires a stronger version of you today. More patient, more disciplined, more wisdom, more faith, more emotional control, more responsibility. And those qualities aren't built through comfort. They're built through the resistance that you're likely facing right now. So don't confuse preparation with punishment. The preparation often looks nothing like the promise. The future may look like it's abundance. The preparation looks like scarcity. The future may look like leadership. The preparation looks like obscurity. The future may look like confidence, but the pressure looks like uncertainty. The challenge you're facing today may be building the exact strength your future requires. So now, if you need proof, let's look at the people who built something great. Here's truth number 5. Every success story has a hidden chapter. Every success story has a hidden chapter. You don't see the darkness in the success stories. See, one of the biggest mistakes people make is believing that successful people had an easier path. Most didn't. In fact, most had a tougher path than you do. The garage, the apartment, the debt, the rejection, homelessness. The years when nobody knew who they were and nobody believed in them. The years when progress was invisible. Steve Jobs helped build Apple in a garage. J.K. Rowling struggled financially before Harry Potter changed her life. Tyler Perry experienced homelessness before building an entire media empire. See, every successful person has a chapter they don't put on the magazine cover. And that's important because if you're watching right now, you're living in this chapter in some way. It's a chapter that feels uncertain, a chapter that feels slow, a chapter that tests your patience. It tests your resolve, the chapter that makes you question your creator. Yeah, sit with that one for a minute. The chapter that asks whether you'll keep building when nobody is watching. The lesson is not the suffering. The lesson is not that suffering guarantees success. The lesson is that success almost always has a chapter of struggle attached to it. See, every successful person has a chapter that they rarely talk about. Do you think Tyler Perry runs around all the time talking about homelessness? It's part of his story. I'm sure he does. But that's not what you see. You see the end result. See, that struggle is usually the chapter that built them, though. And one day, the dark season you're living through will likely become the chapter that explains everything, whether it's good or bad, by the way. See, that flips the script and starts writing the most empowered part of your story. In movie making, they call it the epiphany. So now let's talk about the real reason most people get stuck. And this is truth number 6. Flow is the answer to resistance. See, most people think they have a discipline problem. Many actually have a resistance problem. See, you know what to do. You know you should work out. You know you should cut expenses and save money. You know you should have difficult conversations that you've been avoiding. You know you should take action on whatever you've been procrastinating. Your problem isn't information. Your problem is friction, internal resistance, fear, doubt, old beliefs that don't serve you, old identities that don't serve you, old stories and patterns running through your mind. The darkness isn't what stops most people. The resistance they carry through the darkness is. And that's why flow is so important. See, flow is not motivation and it's not hype. It's not waiting until you feel ready. Flow is what happens when resistance begins to disappear. When resistance drops, movement becomes easier. When movement becomes easier, momentum begins. And when momentum begins, your confidence starts to grow. And when your confidence starts to grow, consistency follows. See, flow isn't the absence of difficulty. It's the absence of unnecessary internal resistance. The darkness is not stopping you. The resistance inside of you is. So that's why lasting transformation doesn't happen by forcing yourself harder. It happens by removing what's standing in the way. Because when your resistance decreases, your flow increases. And when your flow increases, action becomes natural. And when action becomes natural, you start building again. So listen, we just went through the 6 truths every builder learns in the dark. Face the facts of your current chapter. Stop asking why and start asking what. Allow pressure to reveal what matters. Understand that the assignment requires development. Remember that every success story has a hidden chapter, and recognize that flow is the answer to resistance. None of these truths remove the challenge, but they do help you become stronger than the challenge. Because difficult seasons are not designed to destroy you, they're designed to develop you. Not to weaken your character, but to strengthen it. Not to reduce your capacity, but to expand it. And not to end your story, but to prepare you for your next chapter. See, most people don't need more information. You don't, what you need is less resistance. You already know that you should take action. You already know you should improve your habits. You already know you should be moving forward. The problem isn't knowledge. The problem is the friction between who you are today and who you want to become. And I'm going to go back to it because this is why flow matters. I believe flow is probably the most powerful word in the dictionary, if you can harness it. See, flow isn't about forcing yourself harder. Flow is what happens when resistance begins to disappear. And I'm talking about your internal resistance. When your resistance decreases, action becomes easier. And when action becomes easier, consistency follows. And consistency changes lives. And so that's why I built Sisu Vita and why Sisu Vita exists. I'm not here to motivate you. I have no interest in motivating you because I know that that's going to wear off. I'm not interested in pushing you because pushing you wears off. You have to be able to push yourself. And I'm not here to create temporary excitement in your life. But I am here to help you remove the resistance that keeps you trapped in old patterns, old identities, and old stories. Because when resistance falls away, flow starts to emerge. And when flow starts to emerge, your building becomes natural. Look, the business may have failed. The story didn't. The relationship may have ended, but the story didn't. The money may be gone, but your story isn't. The plan may have changed, but your story didn't. Because this chapter is not defining who you are, it's revealing who you are becoming. So years from now, when you look back on this season, will this be the chapter where you decided life was happening to you? Or will this be the chapter where you became the person capable of carrying everything that came next? This is not the end of your story. It's the chapter that builds the person your future requires. Work your body, feed your mind, build your soul. See you next time.
Stuck in your mind, fighting shadows of a story you left behind.